Welcome to Hartman Math. This is lesson 3.7 where we continue to take functions, cubic functions that are in standard form, be able to graph them by putting them into factored form, having the factors lead us to zeros and x-intercepts and end behavior and things like that. So we're going to start by factoring. We always start by factoring out a greatest common factor if we can. And we should. This does have a greatest common factor. So we're thinking, what is our greatest common factor? Anytime the first term is negative, that negative is also going to come out as part of the greatest common factor. We have 2 in common and at least one x. So negative 2x is our GCF, our greatest common factor. Negative 2x times what makes this? X squared. Negative 2x times what makes this? That would be negative 9. X squared minus 9. And then hopefully at this point we recognize that that's a difference of squares. So that's going to break up into x plus 3 and x minus 3. Don't lose track of our GCF. That's fully factored. From there we can get end behavior, roots, and so on. So cubic functions normally starting low, ending high. But a value is negative 2. So because it's negative, it's going to flip it. We're going to start high, and we're going to end low. Our roots from the x, we've got 0 with the multiplicity of 1, meaning it's going to cross. We have a root at negative 3 with an invisible exponent up for that factor of 1, so again we're going to cross. And then our last root leading to an x-intercept is going to be 3 with an invisible exponent of 1, and it's going to cross. So we're going to start high, and then we're going to cross. So take a moment to sketch out the graph. Pause here till you're ready. Then resume. Here's what we should look like. Starts high, cross. And make sure that we're not going straight up the page at any point, and it remains curved throughout. All right, this one is your turn. So go ahead and copy down our f of x function. Pause the video once you've got it written down until you're ready to put all the information and the graph. We're going to start with a GCF. 3 is in common and x is in common. Factor out of 3x, we should have 2x squared minus 11x plus 12. Factor this into a pair of binomials. 2x in the front, x in the front. How can we make the positive 12? It's going to be a minus 3 and a plus 4. If we check, we get negative 8x. Another negative 3x. That makes our negative 11x. So in looking for our roots, remember that 2 does exist. So it's good to think of this as being 2x minus 3 equals 0 when we're looking for roots. End behavior, our a initially is positive. It's actually 6, that tells us kind of the stretch. So it's positive, so we're going to start low and end high for our cubic function. We have roots at, the tricky one, 0 with an invisible exponent of 1. Solve this one for x and you get 3 halves, invisible exponent of 1, cross. And 4, invisible exponent of 1, cross. So we're going to start low, we're going to end high, start low, end high, cross. Pause here until you've got the rest of your graph. It looks like this. Example number 2. Graph f of x, 4 terms, but we always start with GCF. This one does not have an x, but they all have a 5, and when the first term is negative, factor out the negative. So we're factoring out a negative 5. Negative 5 times x to the third plus 2x squared minus 4x minus 8. When we look in here, we learned this in a previous lesson, 3-6. That's a factor by grouping. So we're going to go ahead and group these. A little trickier when this middle one here is a minus. So we're going to group there, squeeze in a plus. And because we're throwing in extra parentheses, I'm going to change these parentheses. You don't have to, but I'm going to change them to brackets. Just another form of grouping. So we're grouping the first two, we're grouping the last two. We're saying, what can I factor out here? Keep the negative 5. I can factor out x squared. X squared times x plus 2. And what can we factor out here? We can factor out negative 4. And then an x plus 2. And so we have a common x plus 2 goes to the front. Now we already have this one really in the front, so we'll keep the negative 5, followed by our common factor of x plus 2, followed by a factor of leftovers, x squared minus 4. That's a difference of squares. Should be pretty good at factoring difference of squares by now. That is x plus 2, x minus 2 as factors. And as we look at this, probably a good idea for understanding about our polynomial function that we recognize that this x plus 2 times x plus 2 means x plus 2 to the second power. So we go, that's how we're going to rewrite it in that condensed form using the exponents. All right, our end behavior, since we got a cubic function that is negative in front with a negative a, it's going to flip it. We're going to start high and low. We've got roots of negative 2 with a multiplicity of 2. Since that's an even number, we're going to bounce. We have a root at 2 with an invisible exponent and multiplicity of 1, therefore cross. And that's it. So we don't need to fill in the next one. That's it for our roots. We've got negative 2, we've got positive 2. We're going to start high. Once we hit negative 2, we are going to bounce. And then when we come over here, we're going to cross so that we finish low. Pause here until you've got the graph. It looks like soft bounce and then a cross there. And that's it for today. I'll see you next time.